director of Management Consulted, and I'm here today to talk about a critical question for the consulting fit interview, probably the most important one. It's walk me through your resume. And I'm going to give a couple of different examples of different versions of walk me through your resume, some ways to prepare, and also just some key things to think about as you're going through the process. So let's get started. The first thing that's important to understand is that when somebody asks you to walk me through your resume, generally, it means that they haven't read your resume. So you have to start with the assumption that you are beginning the process right from the very beginning. And there are a couple of different versions of the questions. You need to know how to recognize them. The first version is when somebody says just that, walk me through your resume. That should be pretty straightforward, and it's going to be a pretty clear way for you to actually just go through the structure that I'm talking about here. The second one is when they say, tell me a little bit about yourself. For the most part, they're looking for a slightly less formal version of walk me through your resume. They don't want you to refer to your resume in such a formal way like you would in walk me through your resume, but they do want you to tell a story and use a similar structure. So you can use a lot of the same words, but you're not going to use the same process. And then finally, sometimes firms will mix it up a little bit and they'll say, tell me 3 things about your background that are critical for me to know, or tell me 3 things that aren't on your resume that are important for me to know. And that will be the opening question of the interview. So it's really helpful to understand just mentally that you might get a chance to kind of warm up into the interview as you're walking through your resume, but you may not. So there are some things that you'll just want to make sure that you remember and understand about your structure and your experience so that you're prepared for some of those alternatives. In addition, it's really important as you're going through the walk me through your resume process that you over-invest in getting this part absolutely nailed down. You should not be nervous. You should not make any mistakes. You should not talk too long. You should not talk too short. You should absolutely have this down so that you could do it in your sleep. And in order to do that, you have a couple of things that you can do. The first is write it out. You have your resume, it's already the bullet point version. Don't use that. Actually write out, walk me through your resume as an essay. It should be about 500 words. It's going to be something similar to what you would put in a cover letter, and it's going to be a great story that highlights everything from your personal background all the way through to your most important experiences. However, it's only going to take 2 minutes. Writing it out is going to help you edit what's the most important and what can be left out. In addition to writing it out, it's important that you prepare and practice it 5 to 10 times. So 5 to 10 times is what it's likely to take you before you begin to get comfortable. Not where you are an expert, but to the place where you actually have nailed down exactly what you want to say. After that, you probably still have another 10 times to go through the practice process. And then finally, it's important to time yourself. It's important because throughout the process of preparing for the interview, you need to become aware of times. Nobody's going to look at their watch. They're not going to tell you when your time is up. They will kind of hold this internal timer, and talking for longer than 2 minutes in this case is going to be too long. So what do you do when you're thinking about walking through your resume? How do you pick what to talk about? How do you build your story? Well, I can spend an entire hour with people going through this all-important question, and today I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes on exactly what I like to do. The first thing that's important to do is introduce your story to them. Remember, that's why you're giving the walk me through your resume. So it needs to be a story. It doesn't need to be the overall data points of everything about your history. You don't want to walk through everything. You want to tell it as a story. The second thing, and potentially just as important or even more important, is that the walk me through your resume question establishes your first impression. It's your first opportunity to say something in the interview, and you want to come across as confident and collected and a great storyteller. So what should you actually talk about? It's important to highlight your education, 2 key work experiences, and 1 leadership experience. Like I said before, you don't want to go through every single thing on your resume. You'll never have time. So you need to give some sweeping assumptions. I've had an 8-year career in X and X industries. Overall, in the last 2 roles that I've held, I did this and this. So you kind of give some sweeping generalizations, and then you're able to focus on a couple of the specifics. The reason that you generally start with your education is that oftentimes it comes first, but also it's generally the level set. The firm knows that you come from a good school, but they just want to understand a little bit of the motivation about why you went there. In addition, it's important to make sure that you include both what you did as well as why. So you don't just want to say, I worked here, I worked here, but give a little bit of context of I moved on to this role because of X. You never ever want to refer to something negative here, but the why, what you were looking for next, how you wanted to expand yourself or grow in your career was really critical and important. The next thing that's really important to understand is that you walk through this in chronological order. You're not actually walking through your resume from top to bottom. So make sure that you let them know that in the beginning, there's a little bit of personal context to your educational experience, and then let them know where you are on the resume if they actually have it in front of them. Because as you're talking through it, the way that it'll make the most sense is to go in chronological order. It's also important to understand that this should be under 2.5 minutes as an absolute rule, and generally under 2 minutes if you're really going to wow them. You want to give them the sense that there's a lot to cover and you're going to cover it in a short amount of time. However, the final thing that's on here is don't rush. You really don't want to give them the sense that you're trying to tell them everything all at once. You're not nervous. You're going to have a long and fruitful conversation in your interview together, so you want to give them the context that they need to ask good questions and also to let them know that you have a lot that you're going to be ready to talk about. So make sure that you highlight all of these things as you're going through the process of building your Walk Me Through Your Resume story. If you have questions on exactly how to do this, we've got a great resource, the Consulting Interview Bible, and we also have tons of information on our website at managementconsulted.com.